Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry, 24/7 shopping available. 160920 is the code. Show her some love, like she showed us.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome into a fresh, hot off the press Wednesday edition of Sportsminute here on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network for this Wednesday night, September 27th, 2023, alongside a three-man contingent of C2C co-host here, alongside Big B, Brandon Herrera, James Gonzalez, and our executive producer, Chris P. Bacon, Chris Mabry himself. Yours truly, Cal McClurg is pinch hitting tonight for Adam Barber on this Wednesday edition of Sports Minute. Big B, good to see you, my man. How we doing tonight?
Yeah, doing good. Sounds like you've done this a time or two. I mean, so
maybe just like here and there, sporadically.
yeah, exactly. You got a voice for you, so you look into getting into it.
Yeah, maybe I should. I'll see what I can do about that later. With that in mind, moving on down to our main co-host here of Sports Minute, our good man James Gonzalez, joining us from somewhere in Southern California. Mr. Gonzalez, how we doing tonight, man? Good to see you.
I'm in the sky today. No, I've been watching the baseball today after work. It's been a really good time. And hey, the trade finally went down in the NBA. One down, one to go. Can't wait to get into some of these topics.
Got a lot on our plate for this Wednesday. And, of course, our executive producer and director of programming here for Coast to Coast Entertainment, our man, Chris P. Bacon. Mr. Mabry, how's it going tonight down there deep in the heart of Texas?
Going good. Yeah, there's a lot of trades going on. A lot of sports. Baseball's fixing to end their season, so a lot to talk about.
A lot going on, folks. Again, as a reminder, this program here on Coast to Coast Entertainment would not be possible without our sponsors besides me. Bracelets, of course. Find all of our partners again, folks, beside me, along with Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry and K&A Custom Craftskin. Please support these local businesses who, again, have been showing us so much love over the past 3+ years of programming here over on Coast to Coast. But, of course, guys, the major big story leading off our program today, of course, is the big three-way trade in the NBA. And the winner of the Damian Lillard sweepstakes is the Milwaukee Bucks, who probably were not on anybody's radar to make this move, as Milwaukee lands Damian Lillard in a 3-team trade between the Portland Trail Blazers, the Milwaukee Bucks, and also the Phoenix Suns, per all teams announcing the trade on Wednesday. The Blazers will receive Drew Holiday, who is already being looked at being dealt away from the Blazers. Suns big man DeAndre Ayton, along with Toumani Camara, along with Milwaukee's 2029 unprotected first-round draft pick, a unprotected Bucks swap rights as well in 28 and 30. The teams have said in their release, while of course the Bucks are of course getting Damian Lillard, while the Suns get Jusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nazir Little, and Keon Johnson as part of this 3-team trade. Brandon, I'll start with you, my man, because I will say this. I don't think anyone out there who's a basketball fan was expecting to see Dame Lillard going anywhere but Miami. Now, I know that we have this report out right now, and if no one's heard the report, but right now, Heat star Jimmy Butler is looking to file a grievance in regards to tampering, perhaps, against the Milwaukee Bucks when it comes to Damian Lillard. And I think, though, Brandon, there might be some small light to that, because I think we all were pretty much in a roundabout way saying, yeah, Dame's going to go to Miami more than likely. But to see the Milwaukee Bucks kind of come out of nowhere, offering up what they offered up again, which was mainly, Grayson Allen going to Phoenix as part of their trade package, a couple of swaps with draft picks in 28 and 30. Drew Holiday also on his way out. And again, he could be also being dealt away from Portland. Brandon, is it more of a surprise in your mind that it was not the Miami Heat, but kind of like a team like Milwaukee kind of coming out of nowhere and snatching Damian Lillard kind of almost like what feels like out of the hands of the Miami Heat?
Yeah, I mean, anybody would have told me Miami was in it, I would have bet against them, and I would have lost some big money, because I'm not a big basketball guy, but it was Miami that we all heard. Little glimpse of the Lakers might get in, Clippers might get in, but it was pretty much Miami's deal to lose, and they lost. And I don't know how. I mean, one thing confused about the NBA is when it comes to trades, they have to, teams have to get so close to the salary cap, and they got to have some good brain wizards back there. And then to have Butler come out and filed a grievance or going to file a grievance. It seems like every big trade, there's always somebody that wants to come out and file a grievance, no matter if it's baseball, football, hockey, basketball. The team that loses out always wants to file an grievance and get it looked at and make sure it wasn't tampered, make sure the cap money all worked. You lost in the trade. Oh, well, it happens. Move on. I kind of hope that the grievance gets turned down and looked away. If it happens to be a true grievance and the NBA revokes the trade, then there should be some penalties on the Bucks side. And again, too, if the trade is approved and they find no grievances, then there should be a grievance on there should be a penalty on the Miami side. I mean, there's got to be punishments if something's found out true or not true for the teams that file or the teams that don't obey the rules on tampering and stuff. So, good job for Miami. I know Tim Hendricks, who's a Milwaukee fan, is happy. So, I mean, I think they shot up to be the favorites to win again this year, stay healthy, and that 72-10 record that the Bulls had, might be in a little jeopardy if that team stays healthy, because that's a scary team.
Scary team, and to Brandon's point, the sportsbook odds have put the Bucks at 4-1 for next season's NBA Larry O'Brien Trophy. I still believe that Denver was favored, I believe, still, despite the trade being made, that they're still like right there, like maybe tied for first with the Bucks or what have you. But again, folks, to recap once more before we get to James and Crispy Bacon once more, the Blazers have dealt Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks as part of a 3-team trade announced on Wednesday that involves the Blazers, Bucks, and the Suns. Portland's package is Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Toumani Camara, plus the Bucks' 2029 unprotected first-round draft pick and unprotected Milwaukee swap rights in 28 and 30, while the Suns get Josef Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nazir Little, and Keon Johnson as part of their trade package. Now, James, again, it's more of a thing that I have been saying here for a bit, or that I thought about here, is where in the world does Milwaukee come from to make a splashy move like this? Now, again, I know that they have moved on from Mike Budenholzer after the end of last season. Again, Bud pretty much ran his course, got that team their first title in over 50 years in the 21-22, 72 game, first year back from COVID season. But that the Bucks really had turned a corner. Now, though, James, they're going to be going to pretty much a new level here, adding in the likes of Lillard alongside Giannis. And again, their odds now 4-1 for the championship. But maybe, though, James, what does this probably say in your mind about maybe what Portland's getting back again? There's talk of them perhaps moving away from Drew Holiday. Is there room for a DeAndre Ayton to flourish now that they have dealt away Josef Nurkic? And even having those 2 potential draft picks. Because I think, though, James, more than anything else, though, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion. We all know this on this panel, that if the Blazers did not trade away that number 2 overall draft pick, that Dame was going to be out the door. I just don't think that we expected him going to anywhere but the Miami Heat, though. But, James, maybe away from Milwaukee, how about maybe your perspective on the Blazers package and the Phoenix package that they're getting in return in this 3-team trade away from Dame going to Milwaukee?
Well, first, I guess I'll answer your questions here. For Portland, yeah, I think Drew Holiday is going to be dealt somewhere to a contender. They're definitely, banking on Scoot Henderson, who they picked 3rd overall in the draft, and he's going to be their future. They're going to build around him, and that's basically all they can do now. They can I know they had their eyes on DeAndre Ayton for a while in a trade because they haven't had a real big man in a while. Nurkic has always been hurt. So it's good that they got their guy, big guy, but it's going to take some time to get this going. They're going to start from the bottom here, kind of. They're going to eat that Ayton money, and then that's it. For the Suns, though, they get Nurkic, which is a really good passer. He's not his former teammate Jokic. Like, they were both teammates on Denver. Right. He's not as good as him as division-wise, but he can rebound well. When healthy, he could play very well, pass well. And that's going to be really big because right now, when you think about it, the Suns don't have a true point guard right now. Maybe they'll bring back Cameron Payne, who San Antonio released. So that might be an option there because he knows the system there, or it's going to be a new system, but he knows the teammates. Remember, they have Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Now you add Nurkic. Grayson Allen can have some toughness off the bench. Hopefully no more dirty crap that he does. Keon Johnson is a good option there too, though. I like him coming off the bench. Remember, the Suns in the trades for Durant and for Bill, they lost a lot of bench players.
Big time.
I mean, they have to get guys.
They basically cleaned the bench out to get those 2 players.
Yeah, so they had to get something back, and I think in this 3-team trade, that worked out. Now, speaking about the Bucks, if you recall, I think it was a week ago, Giannis was asked about, his future there and if he would resign in Milwaukee, after his contract is up, which is, I think, after 2 or 3 years from now. And he said, well, if this team isn't in a winning direction, I might not. Yeah, I'm out. And I think that comment sparked this trade for the Bucks to say, okay, we're going to do whatever it takes to make Giannis happy. We're going to put him finally with another superstar with Damian Lillard. I'm not knocking the actual team the Bucks had that won title in 21. I'm not knocking them at all. I'm just saying, hey, Middleton, okay, he's been there the longest. He's a great piece. He got paid like it. You got Brooke Lopez. You get Drew Holiday. Right. Those aren't superstars. But you finally put that together. And plus, you don't have to get rid of Middleton. You don't have to get rid of Portis. You keep your core at least. But you're okay with what you gave away, which is draft picks in the future, because that doesn't matter. If you're talking about Giannis, you're talking about trying to win every year. And now you've done that with putting Lillard, with Middleton, with Giannis. That's going to be great for years to come, but you have to win it all. I'm going to be interested to see how that matches up against, Boston's duo. You get Miami now, who's kind of, at least Jimmy Butler's heated about this, because we thought all summer long.
Exactly. We all thought the whole summer that it was going to be Dame going to Miami.
Yeah, and you thought, okay, they have all the assets. They have all those shooters off of the bench and that start, Hero, Harrison, Duncan Robinson. But I think Bama Adebayo, I think that was one guy they didn't want to put in the deal for Lillard. And I think that stopped everything for a while because it was silence after a while. And I thought that stopped the deal with Miami. And then I think Portland, and for Damian Lillard too, remember they've been at odds for 3 or 4 months. And media day, remember, is just next week. Yes. You don't want somebody who doesn't want to be there, moping around, like the James Harden situation in Houston, John Wall in Houston. You don't want any of that crap around you. And you want to finally do a rebuild, and you want for Lillard to be as, he was as loyal as it can be. And you realize, okay, they can only get to a Western Conference final in 2019. That's it. That's the ceiling. The ceiling is the roof, like MJ said. And that's all they could get to. That's all they could get to. They were never going to get to that point. And then drafting his replacement basically screwed everything up. And you just knew, okay, start over, trade him somewhere else. So I think it helps all 3 teams, though, because it's reality to Portland that you have to restart. For the Suns, they assure their team at least some spots where you can say, okay, we can put some pieces together, and they get rid of that Aiden deal. Aiden and the Suns, they've been feuding all the time since the 21 finals, where they benched DeAndre Aiden because he was getting worked on. And then you saw this last year's playoffs, he wasn't putting any effort to rebounding against the Nuggets in the Denver series. So they get rid of Aiden. That was great. Now they could free the floor open more, I think, with Nurkic. And then for Milwaukee, it just shows how much, okay, they want Giannis to stick around and how much they want to be contenders. So it worked. This trade, and I love how some trades work out for everyone, and this trade looked like it did.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, that it's rare that you find at least a three-way trade go down like this, where it seems like everyone gets a need. And I want to quickly interrupt because Brandon dropped something cute, or a cool nugget, I should say, in our private chat. Per FanDuel, the NBA odds right now for the title: Milwaukee plus 360. They have the best odds to win it all right now. Celtics plus 500. Phoenix plus 550. Denver plus 650. Per Brandon and per FanDuel at this stage. But Chris, maybe briefly give us your thoughts on probably major news again. It's Damian Lillard getting dealt, but not to where we all thought he was going. He's going to Milwaukee instead of going to Milwaukee and not going to Miami.
Yeah, it is surprising. Damian Lillard is a good player. Surprised Milwaukee was in the mix. So it's kind of a quiet team. But it also seems like that anytime a team has an addition, it seems like the odds for them to win a championship seems to go up.
Every single time. And Brandon, before we actually get to our next topic, I wanted to kind of circle back because James brought up a very great point in his tangent about, or his take about the trade. Because I wanted to read part of this as well, as that Damian Lillard, by the way, guys, will leave Portland after 11 seasons with the Blazers. 7-time All-Star and made 7 All-NBA teams, led the club to the postseason 8 times in 11 seasons, including a conference final appearance, as James alluded to, in 18-19. He's also Portland's all-time franchise leader now in points, 3-pointers, and is number 2 in assists. Brandon, I think you and I are in this same boat here, my friend. Is that we have long grown up in markets like San Diego and the Twin Cities where our teams aren't great. They're good, but not great. Yeah, you have the Twins in winning their 2 World Series, and the Lynx who've won 4 WNBA championships. But you mainly grow more attached to the star players, like a Rod Carew, a Joe Mauer, or players, Tony Gwynn, for example, Junior Seau, players who, again, were loyal to the city and loyal to the fan base and did not leave on their own terms to go, as we would call it now, chase rings, as it has been. I don't see this as Damian Lillard being that way because, yeah, he wanted the trade, though. But at the same time, I really think, though, that he put in at least the effort and the time and longevity, staying as long as he could until he said, okay, I think it's time for me to move on and go somewhere else. But Brandon, maybe your overall thoughts about how you might remember Damian Lillard in his 11 years in Portland. And do you believe, though, that maybe I'm onto a tangent, that maybe it was nice seeing Dame stick it out and stay loyal to that club before he eventually got traded?
Yeah, I mean, loyalty is far few between the players now. I mean, a lot of them, it's the money, a lot of it's rings. But to have a player stay 11 years in one city and go through the ups and downs, and you think you get to the playoffs, you get to the finals, you get semifinals, you think you got something next year, and then you fall, flat on your face, and you're still there. It's just it's tough to, there's great players that don't even get a sniff of the ring that we all wish would have went somewhere else, and they stayed loyal to their team. And I know Malone left Utah, went to Lakers for a year and couldn't get it done. Just sometimes, the player should get the ring, doesn't. It's just sad. But, kind of to alluding to that, this week, a few days ago at work, I got to talk with a couple former Timberwolves about the state of the NBA this year. And they both kind of had the same thing said, that, and just kind of brought, thought about it when the trade happened. These teams that are building these little super teams, I mean, they don't like it. They don't like, which I agree. But again, people want to get rings, and that's what it's all about nowadays. It's not about the loyalty, but, to hear it from a couple former NBA players, just kind of assured me that the fans are in the right mindset. These super teams need to go somehow. They need a stronger salary cap. And granted, But Milwaukee did it the right way. They traded some assets and got a superstar player in there. I'm not faulting them for that because they're just trying to make their team better. It's just the players that leave. But going back to your point, just the loyalty aspect. I mean, Portland fans should be praising Leonard for that. Give them a good props. I've yet to see any videos of them, throwing his jerseys in fires, burning them, burying them. Because it wasn't his. I mean, yes, he wanted to leave, but I think if Portland would have redone things and brought people in, he would have stayed there. So the loyalty goes both ways. You got to be loyal to the player. Got to be loyal. Players got to be loyal to the team. But good for him. Hopefully, he gets a chance to get that ring and then possibly go back to Portland and retire as a Trailblazer when he decides to call it a career.
James, what do you think
about the loyalty situation?
Yes.
Man, it's funny because he was drafted out of Weber State, in 2012, 2013, without much fanfare, and it seemed to work perfect for Portland because they don't get the free agents, they don't get the big accusation, players. So it's funny how his career started just out of nowhere. He could have won Rookie of the Year that year, but right away you could just see him just play well right away, almost like Curry in a way. And then he kind of went the way of Curry, shooting the threes and all that. But when it comes down to the teams that he played on, when you think about it, that 2013 year, they had a stacked team. LaMarcus Aldridge, Nicholas Batum,
CJ McCollum.
CJ McCollum later on went with him and Lillard, and they went on for scoring tangents for years. He did everything you could ask someone to do without a true big man. LaMarcus Aldridge went to San Antonio free agency-wise. That was a big loss. That was the sign of okay, our team is really going to change, and it's going to be centered around just you, Damian Lillard. And yeah, they get CJ McCollum out of nowhere, and those two could only go as far as they could in that Western Conference. When you think about the scoring duos in that time, you got Chris Paul with the Clippers, with Blake Griffin, you get, the Lakers.
Ray Thompson.
Yeah, and then the Warriors, the Dragons there, and then they added Durant and all that. So they can only go, like I mentioned, 2019, they can only go as far as they could in the Western Conference Finals there. But you just knew that, again, that was a ceiling, and just knew. And then he started to get hurt as well the last couple of years, to the point where, okay, either he's been loyal, he's been great, but maybe it's time for him to look elsewhere. I know a lot of people were saying that, every offseason they were like, okay, maybe you should look to go somewhere else. It looks like this Blazer team, it looks like they're kind of moving pieces along. When they traded CJ McCollum to the Pelicans, to New Orleans a couple of years ago, that was the sign of, okay, you better leave as soon as you can, because if not, you're going to be stuck there like Mike Trout is with the Angels. You're just going to be stuck there. You're not going to win. So if you want to win right now, you better go somewhere else. And I think he got to that point where they just knew, okay, he better go and I better go. And then the fact that they drafted his replacement, third overall, Scoot Henderson, that was the sign to leave. And I just felt like, hey, he did whatever he could. He'll have his number retired by Portland, up there with Maurice Lucas, Clyde Drexler, Bill Walton, all those great Blazers back in the day. Eventually, that'll happen. There'll be peace with the organization, and I can't wait for that day. But yeah, he gave him all he could, and I just hope that the animosity that they have, I hope that goes away after a while. Time will heal everything. But yeah, he did everything he could. You can't fault him. I mean, there was 3 or 4 years of this where he should go, where everybody wanted him to leave, and I think he finally got his wish. Everybody got their wish. and it's good for Portland again for Portland to start over in a way.
And Chris, what do you think about maybe Damian Lillard staying loyal, but maybe a little bit longer than he probably should have in Portland?
I could see that. A lot of people, think that when a player stays with the team for a long time, you had Dirk do it for a little bit, Kobe, and you can say LeBron James did too, but it just depends, I guess, on the player and how they act with the team and if they're being productive, if they want to stay or not.
Absolutely, for sure. And again, folks, major NBA story once more again today. Damian Lillard traded by the Portland Trailblazers early on Wednesday to the Milwaukee Bucks, who are now, at this rate, the best odds right now for the NBA championship in a 3-team trade between Portland, Phoenix, and Milwaukee for the upcoming season. With that, guys, as we move into the last part of the Major League Baseball season, of course, we had the very unfortunate, sad news on Tuesday evening that came down with the human vacuum cleaner himself, the great Brooks Robinson, 11-time Gold Glove winner, maybe even more than that. He probably could have won a Gold Glove every year he was playing third base, but of course, sadly, Brooks Robinson passed away at the age of 86 on Tuesday evening. Per a release by the Baltimore Orioles, who are right now right on the cusp of the AL East Division Championship. But also, guys, moving or staying at least with the world of Major League Baseball again into the final weekend coming up here for the regular season. Of course, guys, the main story, though, today, Terry Francona, longtime Major League skipper, managed his final game on Wednesday evening with the Cleveland Guardians franchise. Of course, Brandon, I think any baseball fan out there admired and respected and loved Terry Francona, regardless of who he managed, of course. I know he is much like Dave Roberts and that 04 Red Sox team. I mean, he was the guy in charge of that club who had that remarkable 03 comeback against the Yankees and finally broke the curse of the Bambino, won 2 more world titles there, and almost helped Cleveland end their long drought of World Series futility as well. Big B, how will you remember Terry Francona's managerial career in Major League Baseball?
I mean, realistically, he's probably up there in the talks about, top 10, top 5 managers. I mean, depending on what kind of criteria you want to throw in there. It seemed like everywhere he went, the team kind of got better, I guess, to say. I mean, I know, like you said, he brought them back from the 03 against the Yankees, I think it was.
Yes.
I don't know if he said that. Yeah. So, too bad. I mean, granted, they're in the Minnesota division, but, too bad he couldn't keep that going on. If he wants to coach again, I would assume somebody will bring him in, maybe not as the manager, maybe a consultant.
Bench coach, consultant of some type. I could see that being a thing.
Yeah, so because one thing with baseball, a lot of people believe in the analytics, and then he's got those old school guys. So maybe Francona could be the guy that'll come in and work with the analytic guy and be like, okay, this is what I would do. This is how I see the numbers. Maybe that's the new thing now is get Francona into the office with some of these analytic guys and kind of retweak the system, because analytics works, but it doesn't work. If you're all in, you got to be all in. If you're not all in, then you got to kind of find the fine tune. But, I think, maybe Francona goes to the booth for a little bit with ESPN or somebody. But honestly, the Brooks Robinson news, I just saw it today. I didn't see it yesterday at all. But, like you said, the guy at third gloved everything and probably could have won a Gold Glove for majority of his career. I was just looking at his stats. 55-77. Granted, free agency wasn't around then. Trades barely happened, but to even do that for, if my math is correct, 22 years, but and then I think he went on to manage the Orioles for a little bit. So, rest in peace to him, and I hope his family and everybody's doing okay. And honestly, if the Twins don't win it, maybe Baltimore wins it for him. So,
agreed.
No O's.
Christy Wilson also agrees with Brandon's sentiments that Francona was the perfect manager for the Red Sox, have so much respect and appreciation for him. And again, James, I think it just goes back, though, to that, I think about this, that when the time comes for the Hall of Fame to call Terry Francona, him and Theo Epstein better be a part of the same class, because without those two gentlemen, that '04 Red Sox team does not break the curse of the Bambino. Even the '07 team doesn't win the world title, or either does the 20. Or, well, then again, I don't think Terry was there in 2013. But at least those two teams in 3 years don't win the World Series without Theo and Terry as a package deal, though. So, James, how will you remember Terry Francona's legacy as a manager in Major League Baseball with Boston and Cleveland?
Yeah, Tito Francona. I knew him as a player. He wasn't as good. I think he ended his career in 1990 with the Milwaukee Brewers. But, I was reading up on his, his career, his life. He came from he was born in South Dakota. And I'm like, really? South Dakota? He grew up, in Pennsylvania, that's a blue collar, type of state. And you could see that by the way that he managed. He was, in a sense, a player's manager. And when you think about those Red Sox teams, he had a lot of egos to manage. I mean, that's not easy. Let's get that straight. That's not easy. They had, Manny Ramirez. They had David Ortiz. You have Papelbon later on. You have Pedro Martinez. All these guys that, they ruffle some feathers. So it was amazing that he was able to get all that done, break the curse of Bambino, win again in Boston. That right there, that gives you the Hall of Fame automatically, I think. When you win not only one but two in Boston after all those years,
and let alone 2 and 3 years, again, 04 and 07.
Yeah, and I know it pains me because it reminds me of those playoff failures the Angels had against the Red Sox in 04 in the divisional series and again in 2007. So I know for sure. I know, firsthand what Francona's teams have done. So, credit to him to last all these years. Never under 85 wins in all of his seasons with the Red Sox from 04 to 11. And you can see, too, after 2009 that, Manny was gone. Everybody was getting older. They kind of were going the young route, and you just knew he needed a change of scenery. So he went on to the Cleveland franchise and automatically made them a postseason, hopeful, to contender, and to the freaking World Series in 2016. I would have never thought Cleveland would have made a World Series. The only time I knew Cleveland would make a World Series is in Major League One. That's about it.
But I thought that movie was about guys coming over from India to try to get a spot on a major league roster for pitching. I thought that's what that movie was about. Am I missing something here?
That guy's missing a brain. In 2017, you think about, they lose in Game 7 against the Cubs, but they win 102 games the next year, and then they continue to win 90 games plus almost every year in the years after. But remember, he was going through health problems as well. Right. And there was a lot of games that he missed throughout the rest of his career. So to think about that, I can't see him ever managing again, honestly. But it's funny, I never really dived into his years with the Phillies. From 97 to 2000, they had, bad teams. It was basically, Scott Rowland, a young Bobby Abreu, Pat Burrell, not much else. Like they were sort of building, and he was there. But then you saw what the Phillies turned into after, and then you saw what Cleveland was missing after Eric Wedge. Francona took care of that, and then to do what Grady Little couldn't do with Boston, that was awesome. So yeah, great career again. 2 World Series, 3 pennants, 3 times Manager of the Year, and then. The thing that really pissed me off when I was reading about his final days in Cleveland, he'd always take a scooter in downtown Cleveland to the ballpark and back, and it was stolen. And it wasn't the last time it was stolen. The first time it was stolen, excuse me. But this time, today, or I believe it was today, yeah, or final days at least, it was beaten with a baseball bat, stripped of its parts, and eventually found and returned to Francona.
What? Oh, come on.
And then the worst part is Francona said it was defecated on.
Bro, come on now.
Yeah, so these comments came out after the win they got tonight over the Reds, which is big because they're playing the Ohio series. They're trying to spoil the Reds' chances to get in the wild card. But it's a scooter that he loved, and he's been riding to the ballpark back and forth for years. It puts a stain on his time in Cleveland. I know we're talking about the World Series and 2017 going to the postseason. Who the hell would do that to Terry Francona in Cleveland? You know, it's a bad ending to a great career there in Cleveland.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Bacon, how will you remember Terry Francona during his time as a major league skipper?
No, I mean, he did help out Boston getting over that skid of World Series or missing out on them, and he's going to be a coach that a lot of Boston fans will remember. And maybe the analytical route isn't the best option, but maybe he can use it to his advantage. I'm not quite sure, but Boston fans will definitely miss him.
Boston will remember Tito Francona and Theo Epstein for 04 and 07. All reliable, Tim Hendricks says that Tito was a serviceable pitcher in the Crew City, and then he says, Cleveland rocks? LOL.
Ohio.
Cleveland rocks. With that, guys, we'll move over now to the NFL on the cusp of week number 4 getting underway. And, guys, we're going to visit that struggling New York football organization. That would be the New York Jets, who... guys have been dealing with a lot of stuff going on here again between Aaron Rodgers going down with an injury, Zach Wilson not playing to his full potential, and now, guys, Robert Saleh and key veteran leaders are actually okay with their injured quarterback Aaron Rodgers calling out the club after their past 2 games. Reports have come into ESPN that Jets head coach Robert Saleh and key Jet veterans have had no issue, guys, whatsoever with injured quarterback Aaron Rodgers, albeit absentee style, calling out the team for its sideline squabbles, and they have actually agreed with Rodgers' stance. Cornerback DJ Reed told reporters on Wednesday that he's right. You cannot blow up and show frustration on the sideline, especially on the sideline. Now, Rodgers is out here in California rehabbing his torn Achilles tendon and said on Pat McAfee's program on Tuesday that the Jets need to grow up a little bit, hold our poise a little bit better. And then Robert Saleh, when asked about Rodgers, said he's as much of a coach as he is a player, and he's been around youth, and he's been around adversity, and he has seen it all. So for him to recognize that and talk through it, I think he's not wrong in that when you have frustration, it's easy to look for answers when sometimes the most important answer is inward. As it pertains to what he said, he's not wrong, but at the same time, it's just a bunch of young guys showing a bit of frustration, and they'll all get it right, open and close quote. So, Brandon, more of the subject here is, me personally, I love seeing players take accountability and wear it on the chest. I wish my hometown baseball team would do that instead of deflecting it to the GM and the manager of their ball club. Again, we had more damning remarks come out of the Padre clubhouse earlier this week in San Francisco. But I can also, though, Brandon, see, though, maybe the other side is like, okay, you're hurt, you're rehabbing, shut up, let the guys who are actually playing figure it out, though. But as someone like myself, again, who, has been a part of team sports as a player, I love seeing teammates who want to take accountability and who want to also help lead in this type of fashion. Now, again, I know that Rodgers rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but I actually am fully on board with this. I'm actually glad, though, Brandon, that Saleh's on board with this and all the veterans are on board, because this is the only way that I think a young team with, players who may not have experienced so much adversity of losing and going through the ups and downs in their college careers, this is a good, growing pain, take it on the chin type of moment. So, Brandon, your overall thoughts, are you okay with an injured Aaron Rodgers kind of in a way lambasting his ball club for not playing to their full potential because he's hurt.
Yeah, any player to step up and call out their team and injured or not. I mean, one, that takes big balls, I guess, to do it. And two, I think it shows respect. And now, on the flip side of that, if it was Wilson or some of the young guys stepping up, would the same people have the same respect and the same comments being made? I mean, that's where I kind of, call BS on the team side of it, because they're doing it because Aaron Rodgers has been around the league for a while. Yes. And he does get to speak his opinion, and they should listen. But first year in New York, I don't know. But, if it was somebody else, would we be talking about how the team's ripping them for saying it and it should be kept behind closed doors? But Rodgers has a point, like Chrissy says. The team just needs to man up and play, and please start playing, because I'm tired of hearing the Kirk Cousins trade rumors to New York. I mean, whatever it is, but if it happens, it happens. But yeah, Rodgers, I think, was a good point. Again, I think the team's just backing them, because I think if it was anybody else, we're talking about a whole different subject on this one. So good for Rodgers.
Tim Hendricks agrees with you, Brandon. He says Rodgers is not wrong. It shows up where it shows. Nothing wrong with it on the sidelines. And Christy Wilson to B's points, and that Rodgers does make a good point. And I think, though, James, that Brandon hit the nail on the head on this one, is that would comments like this from Zach Wilson, or even a practice squad quarterback, if it was Colin Kaepernick, would it be respected, or at least taken on the chin from someone not named Aaron Rodgers? I don't personally believe so either with what Brandon said. So I think Brandon is definitely, bullseye, spot on, right on target with this one. Because again, I personally love seeing players who want to take the accountability and again, wear it on the chest, not deflect it to somebody else, or blame, the front office, or blame, the head coach or manager or the athletic trainer, for goodness sakes. But James, your thoughts maybe more so, because I think though that I do though see like that flip side is like, why is an injured player? I don't know, I don't care if he's like a respected veteran though. Why is a guy who's injured, who can't help their team out, actually be saying stuff like this to his, let alone his new club with the Jets? But James, your stance and your thoughts about how this was handled by both, mainly by Robert Saleh and the Jets veterans, about Aaron Rodgers giving honest feedback about how the team has been playing.
Okay, so about Aaron Rodgers and with the Jets, you knew when you were signing him that you knew he was going to be on the Pat McAfee show every week, and he was not going to hold back. So you knew that was going to be an issue, and you knew this was bound to happen. You get what you pay for, basically, with that. On the Jets side, you have to remember last year, I believe they were playing the Patriots, and Zach Wilson had an awful game. He didn't take the criticism and the blame well about it. He kind of deflected the blame to other members of the team, but he didn't take accountability. So I think that rubbed, of course, all the teammates the wrong way. And that still is in the heads of all the Jets teammates. I really think that. And then once Rodgers went down, you're saying, oh, no, that guy again, that little idiot over there is going to try to play quarterback for us, the one who can't get us the ball, So I know that the teammates hate Zach Wilson. They rather prefer Aaron Rodgers, but he's not there. So I think that's why they were okay with Aaron Rodgers calling out the team, because it's a credible source. It's a veteran source. It's one that's proven. Unfortunately, it's banged up. But when somebody that has a powerful voice or can back it up speaks, I think people in that system will listen. They're not going to listen to a little idiot over there, Zach Wilson. They're going to listen to, God almighty Aaron Rodgers. So that's how I see it. And then just about the team, though. It's a young team. They don't have too many veterans. So there's no real voice in the locker room. And then the head coach himself, Robert Saleh, he's young in a head coach's sense. This is his first head coaching job with the Jets. He can't afford to say the wrong thing, especially in that market. So he has to go with the flow of whatever Aaron Rodgers says or whatever is said that can spark up something really good, that can fire up a team like the Jets right now, like what they really need. Again, they can still make the wild card somehow, but they need this kind of kick in the butt for it to happen. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen just based in the division that they play, and then the AFC is pretty tough. But I think it was just that. Like, Saleh didn't want to lose his job right away, at least not yet. It's a credible source with Rodgers saying what he said, and no one's going to listen or really defend Zach Wilson. If there's any bad words about him, they're going to agree with that based on what happened last year. So that's how I see how this Jets mess is going.
Chris, again, like I've said, though, is, again, I'm all for this happening again. And I know it might be a bit of like a weird paradox or a weird situation again, that this is a injured player who's not playing, voicing their displeasure or voicing their opinion about how his club is playing. But again, in a day and age, though, where athletes, though, are so quick to, like, it's not my fault, blame somebody else, again, as Brandon and James alluded to about, like, Wilson deflecting the attention away from him after last season, after a couple of games he played. Chris, where do you stand on this?
I mean, it's good that he's speaking about what he what he thinks is going on with the Jets, but at the same time, he's not there. He's in another part of the U.S. He's back in California rehabbing, so he's not in the Jets organization per se. Like, he's not in the facility, and I don't know when he's able to, but it's hard to figure out what's really going on in the organization if you're not there.
A couple of comments, guys. Christy Wilson first says, and again, agreeing with Brandon, if it had been Zach Wilson saying what Aaron Rodgers said, he would have been ripped to shreds by the New York media, let alone teammates, front office, and probably the head coach. And our good man, Jason Barber, writes in, you knew that Rodgers was a prima donna, though, fellas, when you signed him. Real question is, was everyone in Green Bay right about Rodgers? Brandon, you want to take a shot at that one?
Well, I don't know. I mean, was he a prima donna in Green Bay? Yeah, possibly. But I mean, again, he wanted out. He threw some ideas. Organization to listen to him, and he got a little butthurt and wanted out. I mean, just like our jobs, we go and throw out ideas, and if they don't listen, then okay, we move on, or we just stick it out and let them do their job. That's what they're there to pay the big bucks for. But the thing is, with Wilson, if he wouldn't have made his comments last year, I think, one, Rodgers ain't there, because then he's accepting his place as a leader there to deflect and blame everybody else and not take responsibility as the quarterback. I think rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So if he would have done and been like, yep, you know what, the team's stinking, I'm stinking bad, I need to change my play. That's where I think the team lost him at, was he just didn't want to take responsibility. So, but we will see what happens. See what happens this week.
James, I know you wanted to chime in on this question being asked by Jason.
Yeah, so Jason's right on that, because Aaron Rodgers basically held the Packers in hostage for about 3 years. Will I retire? Will I not? I'm not happy here. You guys won't draft me a receiver. There was just so much turmoil. And it was all because of pretty much what Rodgers would say in the media. And then what he would say on the Pat McAfee show, what he would tell others, what he would tell his best friends, what he wouldn't tell his family, of course. It's just funny how, all that will come out. The turmoil that he caused about, his turmoil in Green Bay. All that will come out in books or in a podcast in the near future, I think. So I'm waiting for all those juicy details. But you can bet he was kind of a dictator, I would think, in Green Bay. So, yeah, what Jason said here, I think there's merit to it, no doubt. There will be eventually tales about his time in Green Bay and how, I think that especially the management could not stand him after a while, but they had to keep him because he was back-to-back MVP. So, yeah, I agree with Jason on that.
And I would even add on, too, that Rodgers and Matt LaFleur not seeing eye to eye on play calling a couple years ago. And we talk about like the alpha males of like GM and head coach butting heads in sports, but quarterback one, head coach butting heads might be a little bit of a bigger blow to take, I would say, probably on the chin. Tim Hendricks also writes in, Rodgers equals Favre 2.0. And he also says that Rodgers learned how to hold a team hostage just like Brett Favre did at one point in time. Absolutely. And kind of like weird how this is like a very weird paradox, too, that like Favre leaves the Packers, goes to the Jets, retires, and then he'll go play for Big B's the Vikings in a couple of years, then retire again. And he'll probably go for when it's all said and done. Great news, guys. We're going to talk about college athletics. Good news. We're also not talking about realignment. The bad news, we're talking about a coach being fired due to ongoing complaints of sexual misconduct at Michigan State University, where Mel Tucker, the head football coach, has been fired for cause as of Wednesday, formally completing a long process that was begun and initiated last week. Tucker is currently under investigation for a sexual misconduct complaint brought upon by Brenda Tracy, a sexual assault awareness speaker. Via a statement from the university, the Spartans have said that it had terminated the head coach's contract for his admitted and undisputed behavior, which has brought public disrespect, contempt, and ridicule upon Michigan State University, and also constitutes a material breach of his agreement and morals, open and close quote. Now, Coach Tucker got suspended back on the 10th of September without pay, and Spartans AD Alan Howler has informed Tucker 8 days later via a letter that the school intended to fire him for cause. The school then opened up an investigation into Tracy's complaint back in December of last year, and there remains a upcoming university hearing on the matter at hand. The formal firing, though, loomed as the final step in the university separating from Tucker, who still has nearly $79 million left on his contract. By firing him for cause, the Spartans are attempting to not pay Tucker any of that remaining money, while the AD also claimed in the letter that the school had amassed a body of undisputed evidence of misconduct that warrants termination for his cause, open and close quotes. So, Brandon, it might be a good and all that we're not talking about realignment or the college football playoff expanding, but it's also these kinds of stories that sadly just kind of seem to pop up, though, in college athletics. If we're not talking about realignment, if we're not talking about, the college football playoff or the Pac-12's, immediate future, it's always like coaches getting caught with sexual misconduct, point shaving, illegal recruiting tactics. Again, Jim Harbaugh gets suspended 3 games for buying a recruit a cheeseburger during a visit to Ann Arbor. But obviously, though, Brandon, there's a lot of, things to unpack here. Brandon, I guess any thoughts? And mainly more than anything else, though, is this more of a story not because of Coach Tucker's, sexual misconduct, but also because of the length of his contract? You're looking at nearly $80 million over the next decade that could be hanging in the balance right now between the Spartans and Coach Tucker.
Oh, man, it's tough. none of us were in the conversations or, know these guys personally. J-Mac threw out a comment there that, he read that somebody made, would this all be a story if he was white? It's just a hard one to comment on because you just don't know the full story. I mean, yes, the woman said something else, and then he admitted that it was consensual talk or something like that, I read. So, I hate to just weasel out of it, but I just don't. really want to talk about it because it's all over the place, everywhere. I mean, every job has it. You know, is the woman innocent all the time? No. Is she innocent? This one, maybe. I just, I don't know. I mean, it's publicized because it's a college sport. It's higher up people, but who knows how much more this is happening. With a player and a cheerleader, or a player and a teacher, or this and that. So who knows if she even came on him first, and because he's married, right? So maybe he just said no, and maybe the flirting got too much, or I don't know. It's just, I mean, like Chris says, too uncomfortable to talk about. I mean, it should be something that should be kept back behind closed doors, just because we uh don't need to know that. That's one thing about social media. We don't need to know about all the stuff that happens behind closed doors.
So, Brandon, if I may, like, maybe twist the story a little bit, because I think Jason has a very valid point. Because this just popped back into my head, thinking of Deshaun Watson, Trevor Bauer, even two other players that we have known that have been, caught in this limelight of sexual misconduct. So, Jason's question, Brandon, I'll start with you.
Yep.
Should anyone be fired for allegations, or should you have to be charged first before you're fired?
That's plain and simple right there. I agree. I think it should be. I mean, allegations are just allegations. I mean, unless they got. I think you said, Callan, they had evidence proving all the facts. So, yeah, I mean, if they had the evidence they can prove it, and if he can't fight it, then I guess fire him. But it's still allegations. I mean, they said they fired him for allegations, so yeah, I guess I would not fire over allegations. I mean, suspend him for a while, demote him for a little bit until all this is said and done. But I mean, I guess if they got the hard proof evidence, then they're good. But it's something that doesn't need to be put in the media. This is a private matter. And that's one thing that kind of sucks about the whole thing, is that we're hearing about a private issue.
Yeah, and James, it just seems like, though, that if it's not college realignment, if it's not the CFP expansion, there's something like this popping up, though, within college athletics. It's point shaving, it's illegal recruiting tactics, it's sexual misconduct or stuff of this caliber, sadly. And maybe we may have gone off the rails putting this topic into the rundown tonight, and that falls on me. My sincerest apologies for that. Yeah. But James, though, I think Jason probably has a better topic here along these lines, though. Again, like we brought, though, about Trevor Bauer. We thought about, Trevor Bauer, Julio Urias, for example, even as we have also said with, with other, Deshaun Watson as well. Jason, James, I want to get to Jason's first question. I'll get to that one in a second here. But James, your thoughts on Jason's question first, because it's almost like the old saying of innocent until proven guilty has become guilty until proven innocent at this rate. So, James, your thoughts on maybe people should people be fired for allegations, or should you have to be at least charged first and then fired?
It's funny how things have turned now, right? So
topsy-turvy.
If you're guilty in the court of public opinion, and if it doesn't look right, especially in the society we live in now, especially like the Me Too generation and all that, it doesn't matter if you're guilty or not right away. You're going to get fired. You're going to get suspended, whatever the case is. That's how things have changed nowadays. Way different than, keep it on a hush, don't say anything. Way different now. So that's my opinions to Jason's quote there, question there, because that's just the way things are now. Any little story that comes out, remember what happened, with Wander Franco, with that story. Yep. He's gone. He's wiped away from anything, baseball related. So that goes to show you, hey, anything that's in the public eye that comes out right away, you're taken away from what you're doing, even if you're not guilty yet, or even if you get off like you saw Trevor Bauer get off. But you see, he still hasn't made his way back stateside to pitch. So things have changed now. It's a Me Too generation. There's more eyes and more feelings, on men especially. So yeah, that's my opinion on that.
I wanted to quickly, and James, I apologize if I intruded upon your thoughts here, but Jason, I
No,
wanted to
no.
get to this other one about why is it always men? When's the last time a woman got fired for this? Marlene Stallings at Texas Tech University, her whole staff got the boot because of physical abuse and also mental abuse and also unconsensual sexual actions and activities towards members of the women's basketball program. Stallings was at Minnesota, went to Texas Tech, and essentially this all came out where half the team, if not the whole team, basically boycotted the whole entire season because of the coaching staff being abusive physically, mentally abusing players, and also, again, there was some reports too of some sexual advances made as well. So that is at least the last time, at least the past couple of years, that this did in fact happen as well. And more than anything else, though, I guess, Chris, maybe any thoughts here about maybe that Jason's onto a valid point here?
Yeah, he is, and it also hurts the team itself because now you got a distraction. It's not a good situation at all.
Yeah, not the best. Again, folks, Mel Tucker, the head football coach at Michigan State, again, fired with cause from the Spartans earlier on Wednesday due to sexual misconduct at this rate. But it's more than anything else, though. The last hurdle is what to do with the remaining nearly $80 million on his contract for at least the next 10 years. That'll be a subject that will be perhaps talked about as the week winds down and we move into the new week coming up here very shortly. With that in mind, guys, over in the WNBA postseason, the league MVP award came down to 3 big-name stars, but it goes in favor of Breanna Stewart, who wins her second league MVP in the closest 3-way MVP race in WNBA history. Dating back to 1997, she wins the award over Alyssa Thomas of the Connecticut Sun and Las Vegas Aces superstar Asia Wilson. This marked the narrowest margin between the top 3 vote getters in league history, which also, guys, had a bit of a ripple effect across the whole league, including, obviously, the 3 players who won the award, or the 3 players that were nominated, I should say, but also amongst the Sun and also even the Las Vegas Aces. So, Brandon, the main question here, though, and again, all 3 players, I think, deservedly so, should have gotten first-place votes. But, Brandon, with how the voting was so close, Stewart, Alyssa Thomas, and Asia Wilson, could the league may have made a one-year, maybe a concession for multiple co-MVPs because all 3 players were essential. Again, as I said, though, it's about the value to the team. I know the Aces and Liberty are the main 2 super clubs out there, but the Sun have been on a huge heater of like 5 or 6, maybe 7 straight playoff appearances. But I think, though, Brandon, when it comes to value to the organization, all 3 players probably should get at least a third of that trophy. So, Brandon, should the league at least maybe done co-MVPs for 2023 between Stewart, Thomas, and Wilson?
That would have been, I think, historic in any sport because I don't think there's been a 3-way tie for MVP, that I can recall. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, everybody's got a vote. Everybody, puts it in ballot. They count them up. I don't know if they even meet in a place. They just send it to the head office and they turn around and then count the votes. But it would have been cool. I mean, I'm not a big one on the WNBA. I watch it, but to be that close, like you said, Colin. I mean, yeah, they should have got a committee together to be like, hey, how about all 3 of these people get, or 2 of the 3 get the MVP? So it would have been a precedent. But congrats to all 3 of them. I mean, they had great careers. I'm with you, Colin. It's the importance of their team. The value they bring. That's why when somebody wins that's on a losing team, it's like, Yeah, but if you look, how much worse would they have done without that person? So it's the most valuable player. It's not the most popularity vote. So, maybe sports needs to think about having a committee of, 5 to 7 people and sit down and review the votes, see how close this is. Like, okay, they're only separated by X amount of points. How about we just make both of them MVPs? So maybe that's something to think about. But I don't think the sports want to do that. I think they want to have that be a one-person award. So, congrats to her, though.
James, I think that this further goes with my logic, other than the fact that it's about the true value to the club. This also, I believe, begins to respark the debate if the sports media should be allowed to vote for the league MVP when they are not truly on the floor watching these players play. They're watching from a distance, and again, though, not just that, though, could personal bias also affect voting? As I said a couple weeks ago here about Verlander and Scherzer maybe being potential, first ballot Hall of Famers. But I think, though, James, I believe the stat was that the 13 votes between third place and first place was like, again, closest MVP race in WNBA history. Again, thinking all the way back to the first year back in '97. So, James, do you believe that maybe not just about, co-MVPs though, but should the players who see these players play on the daily, should their votes, if they even get votes, weigh more than what the public eye views and sees on a nightly basis?
As you mentioned, I'd be worried about personal bias. It'd be like a class president race. That's what I'd be worried about.
King and queen votes. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I'd be worried about which button to accept from which candidate. So that's what I'd be worried about, honestly. So. And this debate happens in the NBA as well. There's no perfect system, especially for the All-Star game. I hate that the fans get to vote for the starters. Horrible. I hate that. But this league, it's of course smaller. There's lesser teams. So going to what Brandon said, or Big B said, that it's a professional league. It only should be one. And it's the MVP award, not the Rookie of the Year award. In the NBA, we've seen 3 times a co-Rookie of the Year, but never a co-MVP. So I think they should base it on that, since it's, the NBA's product. But, getting to how it was won by Stewart, I think she made the last impact to win that award, to persuade the voters to score 40 points at least in 3 straight games, or 3 games in a single season. And then she added a 4th in September, and she averaged at least 30 points in 7 games. So I just think that just at the end of the line, she performed the best, by the time you had to put your votes in. So I just think she won it by that. But, I was looking at the other candidates and seeing, oh God, who was it? Someone was a triple-double machine. Yeah, and I remember with Russell Wilson how Westbrook, excuse me, I get those wrestles mixed up, but yeah, Westbrook, he won the MVP strictly on having the most triple doubles in a season and all that, or averaging a triple double or whatever. But I especially in the WNBA, I don't think the big threes, the big trios, should take away from someone from the MVP award. Agreed. But yeah, I know value and all that means something, but if someone's going out there and far above, outperforming someone else, they should be rewarded more than the others. Although it was a really close award or race there. And Aljaz Wilson was there. And then, yeah, you mentioned Alyssa Thomas, who balled out last year, as well as Wilson, who won the award last year. It reminded me of one race. I think it was Cheryl Swoops and Lauren Jackson in 2005. Mm-hmm. And the Swoops won the award over Jackson of Seattle with 4 fewer first place votes. And I actually remember that race and how that season ended up. But because I wanted Jackson because she was tall from Australia, she was awesome. I got to watch her play, but Swoops was amazing. But yeah, I think you can't do a co-MVP, especially in a smaller league where there's lesser players. You have to have that one stand out, like in the NBA, just like in the NBA, just like for their product, you can only have one, I think.
Yeah, and Chris, and I think that again, Brandon and James are just like spot on, because I also agree though that that this is always the debate that I think just rubs a lot of people the wrong ways when it's voted upon based on like the popularity of the player. I still think that this award should have gone to Alyssa Thomas, because everyone that's a media pundit who's followed the WNBA all year, like myself, has had New York and Las Vegas in the final from the get-go because of what the Liberty did, getting Courtney Vandersloot, along with them having Ionescu. Then of course they also got Stewart. Then of course the Aces had their whole core back: Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, and of course Asia Wilson. Then you added in Candace Parker, but she's been out with a fractured foot though for a good chunk of the season. Where Connecticut was not projected to be in that top two. They've been a very good, consistent winner. Like I said, they've been in the postseason like 5, 6, 7 straight seasons, and they are doing it with really, names, but nowhere near the caliber of like the Liberty or the Aces. Yeah, you've got Alyssa Thomas and you've got Dejanay Carrington from San Diego. You've also got players like DeWanna Bonner, but they're not like the A-list big draw names of like Stewart, Ionescu, Vandersloot, Wilson, and Parker and Plum in Vegas and stuff of that caliber. But maybe, Chris, could the WNBA may have pulled off the rare co-MVP this season for those 3 players because of how close the voting was?
I think they could. I think they've done it in the NFL before. They've probably done it in NBA. I think they could have done it. Maybe they felt like the player had better stats, and that's sadly how we kind of measure who's the MVP, is based on stats instead of how they played during their season with their stats. But I think they could have made, maybe co-ed or 2 co-eds, 3 co-eds, but
Christy Wilson chimes in, guys. She says that she believes the league looked at Stewart and the impact she had on the Liberty. Jason also agrees that a co-MVP should have happened. Jason further says that Stewart has been a beast since coming out of UConn, when she got benched in a game for showboating. And Jason also agrees, bigger market, New York versus smaller market, Connecticut. Bias has always existed no matter what the media will tell you or say. Definitely agree for sure. And I also love the fact that Sabrina Ionescu guys clapped back and said that they're playing, like the most exciting basketball that New York has seen in quite some time, because, the Knicks have been, trying to climb out of, the cellar for the past 20 plus years. And, the Nets have kind of gone sideways. And even though I remember very well that a certain former podcast host of ours said that the Nets were going to win a title in like 2021 with Durant and all those guys. And how'd that go for them? Oh, it's right. It was Bucks and 6. And that team is nowhere close right now to getting back on track at this rate. With that, though, guys, I know that you 3 are all in your little football zones right now, but there is one other fall sport starting up shop here as of right now with their preseason. That, of course, guys, is the pro hockey season is right around the corner. Again, there's a really big game here on Friday in San Diego involving a couple of really well-known, well-respected SoCal NHL franchises coming to America's finest city. But Brandon, you live in the quote-unquote state of hockey for the U.S., so the question here, my man, is simple. Is hockey a underrated sport in the U.S. in your mind?
I think it is. I had cousins that played, and I got to watch them when I lived with them. Go to hockey practice, come back, and pretty much just pass out on the way home because it was so exhausting. So overall, I think it is overrated or underrated. I'm sorry. But and also, too, guys, if you guys don't know, Callan, you might, because I know you follow hockey pretty well. The women are starting up a little professional league. I think they're having
Yes.
an inaugural season next season.
I believe so. And they have their own original 6.
Yep. Minnesota's part of that because we just had the draft or one of the drafts,
Yes.
and so there's another team that's going to get a Stanley Cup before the pro team here in Minnesota. But yeah, I think overall, just look at the players getting paid. I mean, they're, what, a tenth of what basketball and NBA is getting paid, and it's just I don't know if they market it well. I mean, that might be one thing too that they should look at, marketing, because it doesn't seem like there's many commercials. I mean, speaking of commercials, I don't think there's any hockey players in these commercials. It's always basketball, it's always baseball, it's always football. So that might be something they need to do to get it more notarized. But yeah, being here in the so-called state of hockey, when's the last time the state of hockey won a Stanley Cup? So, but yeah, I'm actually can't wait for hockey season to start up. I mean, outside the cold and stuff, but I also can't wait for the women's to start up and kind of give them props too. And just like we covered the women's pro league with the Oregon Cougars here, it'll be cool to see some women out there skating around.
So we go from the state of hockey in beautiful Minnesota to 2 guys in Southern California, or as it would be called, a non-traditional hockey market. And James, I've kind of been sitting around here over the past week because I've been basically off from work this whole week until Friday, except I picked up the game on Monday. And I tried to go back into the archive to see how many games I've actually worked in my career. So I have found out that out of the 15 years I've been in sports broadcasting, I've worked 14 of 15 years possible inside of the sport of hockey. This is a former baseball player, baseball loving, fan who happened to fall in love with hockey in the early 2000s when the San Diego Gulls were in the West Coast Hockey League playing Double-A baseball, basically, and feeding guys to the then Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, then later on the Colorado Avalanche, and hearing stories from my parents who went back when Willie O'Ree played here in the 60s, and then the WHA came here, and then even going further back, there was teams here during World War II who won 2 championships as the Montreal Canadiens farmhand back in the 40s and 50s. And knowing, though, that hockey's been here for so long in San Diego, then Jack Kent Cooke has the idea to bring the Kings in 67. Then the Sharks come in 91. Then, of course, the Ducks come in via the Disney company in 93, going on 30 years this season. And seeing, though, and like I've long said, though, gents, is part of my purpose of even being in the sport is to help grow the game. I hear it a lot from our ownership with the Ducks, from the Kings, is our goal, yes, is to obviously win and go for the cup, but we have to continue to help grow the game here. And I think a lot of that, though, came with the Kings coming in 67. Then in 93, even before 93, you had the Monty Duck movies come out, made by the Disney Corporation. And then I think D2 is kind of what turned people on in SoCal to the sport because, hey, the weather's nice. Go grab some rollerblades. Let's go play at a local community park, somewhere in downtown LA or at Santa Monica, and stuff like that. And then also, not just that, though, the influx, though, of California players who've been drafted. I think of Emerson Edom, who was from Long Beach, who's now the Ducks radio color commentator on TuneIn Radio. I think of Matt Nieto, who's now with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then not just that, though, the fact that my organization is the top affiliate. So now anyone who is drafted by the Ducks, they will, at some point in their career, come and play in San Diego in the American Hockey League, and over 85 to, close to 90, between 85 and 90% of guys in the NHL right now played at some point in a AHL market like San Diego, like Ontario, like St. John's, Newfoundland, and Canada, like small market cities like this. So, James, in your mind, though, is hockey underrated in your mind in North America, let alone in the U.S.?
I think it is, especially in the warmer climates of America. But man, I think it all depends where you live. That's what I really think. And then, oh man, it's just funny you mentioned rollerblades and going outside. I'm just thinking of Mighty Ducks 2.
Exactly.
That was my first exposure, honestly, to hockey.
Same.
And then I learned about Wayne Gretzky and how he was on the Kings. But growing up where I did in LA, I didn't really know much about hockey until maybe 2003 when the Ducks made their run to the Stanley Cup Finals, losing to New Jersey. And I think 2007, that was one year I watched. And then
they won in 2007.
Right. And then I think it was 2011 was the first year that I really got into playoff hockey, with Vancouver losing to Boston in that Game 7 there in Canada. Ever since then, I would put more importance toward the playoffs than regular season. And that's my fault. But I have to get into it at a certain point. I think I have to give it some justice. So it's underrated, in my opinion, just based on that. And I hope, and I say this with the Ducks because I hope they keep that young player, Trevor Zegras. I hope they keep him around for a while, but I know there's news out there that might shortchange him, that the organization might shortchange him and he could be gone. And I'm thinking for a market like this in Anaheim there, that would be someone to keep and someone to, build a team around. I know that they lost out on the draft again. Or getting the first pick and went to Chicago. That helps that part of country, that really loves hockey. So I think it really depends where you live, because out here you really have to search to find someone like Alan. And then like my friend Dominic, who is at Catella Chronicles, he covers the Ducks and the Angels, but he and you are like the only two people I know that really follows the game, that follows the Anaheim Ducks. So I think it takes a while to find people like you guys that will follow the game and will have opinion about it, unlike me, until the playoffs. So again, I think it's really underrated just based on where you live. But then once it's playoff time, that's when I'm watching everything, especially if it's a game 5 through 7. I'm watching every game. But I know they're trying to get the game going more. You mentioned the players, from California playing on teams, but it's like soccer. I don't mean to,
no, I totally catch your drift, though. Yeah.
I don't want to criticize or put down a league or whatever, but it's going to take a while, if ever, to get on the level of the major pro sports in America. That's just the issue. And I do like, though, that NHL, their weekly games of the week, Sunday games, weekend games in the regular season. I do like that they put them on like TNT, ABC, ESPN now.
Yes.
You don't have to go. Yeah, you don't have to go searching for them like you did when it was on like NBC Sports Network. That
Right.
really, and Versus, that really helps because I had the hardest time trying to find some games that maybe I wanted to check out. Sidney Crosby was playing Ovechkin or something. Now it's everywhere, so hopefully that can boost this game instead of being underrated to where it wants to be with the again, I don't want to criticize the NHL or whatever and its status, but I want it to be not only like with the top 3, but I want it to be in the running right there with baseball, right
Football.
there with I want it to go over the NBA because the toughness of those players, of the hockey players, it gets really that's underrated. The toughness of the hockey players. You only hear stories or you see what happens, and then you see the NBA with all this load management. I don't think there's any load management in the NHL unless a player is really injured. They play hurt. So I really admire that. But yeah, I'm going too long on this. But I think the game is underrated, but it depends where you live. That's what I think.
And and Chris, in your case,
Mhm.
Dallas never had a team until the North Stars moved to Dallas in the mid to late '90s, and of course they won the Cup over Buffalo. I believe in the '98-'99 season they won, and I believe they were playing at Reunion Arena at that time. But even the
Mhm.
Stars have this really big following down in Dallas. And you're talking about going up against the Cowboys in the middle of the fall. You're going up against the Rangers right now in the run, in a potential run to a playoff berth and a division championship, and there's a lot going on down in down in DFW right now, but yet the Stars are still a very, well-run organization. And again, I think it's like James said, though, it's about where you live, maybe, that the sport is not quite on that even level with like the Mavericks or the Rangers, the Cowboys, what have you. But maybe Chris, in your mind, though, do you believe that hockey might be underrated in particularly in the U.S., but maybe more about the market that you're living in, like for example, where you're at down in Texas?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's in general a underrated sport, but I know at first when it came to Texas, I'm sure it was an underrated sport. Now with winning the Stanley Cup in the '90s, and then you recently, even though it was during the pandemic, you went back to the Stanley Cup playoffs and the finals, almost won it, and then you nearly almost came back a couple years ago. There's a lot of fans that have jumped on board with hockey. It's becoming a huge thing. Um, and I think it's good, to follow different sports and to like different sports. It gives a different dynamic to the area. So I think it's good, and I don't think it's really an underrated sport anymore here in Texas.
Christy Wilson agrees, guys. I believe that hockey is underrated. People don't realize how exciting it really is. And I think that goes to James's point. Exciting during the postseason where you're literally on a knife's edge, pun not intended though, of like one bounce off of someone's shoelace or skate lace, could dictate whether you move on to the next round or not. And again, and also like James said though too, again, the toughness that these guys show, and like James said, there's stories out there. John Madden, who once played for the, not the John Madden who coached the Raiders, but John Madden, who was a 3-time champ with the Devils, once told Mike Emmerich after they beat Anaheim in 2003, he said, it took me almost a month, if not 2 months, to get out of bed and not feel pain somewhere from the wear and tear of the regular season and then going through every single round of the playoffs so you finally get to the final. Then either you win it or you lose it. And there's other stories of guys who played through like ripped ACLs, broken feet, broken ankles, broken wrists. I think Mark Stone of the Golden Knights in the clinching game last year when they won 9-3 and he had a hat trick, he played the whole game with a broken wrist. I'm sure, that adrenaline was flowing, cortisone injections. And I also believe Valeri Nichushkin, who played for the Avalanche when they won the Cup over Tampa Bay the year prior, his foot was so severely injured that he had to have like uh, training, like the trainers, I think, and teammates help him put his skates on because his foot was so severely bruised and like was just way out of the box. And there's a lot of stories though about how these guys play and how they can fight through that pain somehow, some way. And furthermore, Jason says, then again, though, guys, some people say that hockey's the easiest sport to coach. I wonder who said that. And also, Christy also agrees that she loves watching the NHL coverage on TNT again. And I think, though, more than anything else, though, Christy, that is one great studio team. I love Steve Levy and the guys at ESPN because I have a couple of friends who work for ESPN during the NHL season, but TNT's group is really, really, it's almost in a way like a reflection of like the NBA
The
on TNT
NBA.
with Ernie and Chuck and them. And then, of course, you got Gretzky and Henrik Lundqvist and Paul Bissett on TNT with Anson Carter. But either way, their coverage, though, is also very, very great as well. With that, guys, we're going to do our final thoughts for our program tonight. Big B, you up first. What you got?
Nah, thanks for the interaction with our fans. Keep tuning in to C2C. I do have to apologize for Rankum not being on today. I was kind of coming down with something yesterday, so I messaged him. I said, hey, let's shoot for next week. So next week we are going to have one of our mega shows.
Beautiful.
We're going to cover some birthdays in October, September. So check out that. Again, apologize. And Callan, did you find out who's doing play-by-play for that hockey game you're going to be attending to on Friday?
Oh, I think it's going to be me.
Oh, it's going to be you. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that, buddy. I know you're looking forward to it.
I'll be in house over the PA at the game on Friday. Yes, I still need to pick out my suit.
Yeah,
I have not done that yet. I got another day to figure it out though.
All right.
Anyway, Mr. Gonzalez, down to you. Final thoughts. What you got?
Man, congrats on that. And I don't know, is it going to be on locally?
I couldn't tell you honestly. I do believe there's a game in late February that will be on local television. I believe in late February.
All right, I'll be sure to check that out. Yeah, thank you for having me on. A lot of interesting topics. I think we went deep into topics today, as there's a deep drive by Castellanos in the left field.
Dynamite drop in there, Monty.
I've said enough for a lifetime. Thank you for having me on tonight.
Of course. Mr. Bacon, what you got for us, man?
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching, tuning in. A lot of great shows coming this week, coast to coast. Just keep checking out the network, and glad to be on Sports Minute.
Glad to be here, and glad to be filling in for Adam Barber somewhat last minute tonight. Hopefully all is good with Adam and the fam here on this Wednesday evening. Quick schedule alert for you folks. Again, what's more, because of my mega event on Friday, we'll be taking tomorrow and the following Thursday off for Press Row because I'll be back at work next Thursday as well for college volleyball. So check back for us on Press Row on October 12th for our next program here. Here on Coast to Coast again, as we dive back into all of our media, or sports media and sports business discussion back here on Press Row. Again, that'll be in 2 weeks' time, coming up on the 12th of October. With that in mind, though, folks, on behalf of Adam Barber and also for Big B, Brandon Herrera, James Gonzalez, and Chris Mabry, yours truly, Cal McClure, in place of Adam Barber, saying good night from across the good old US of A. We'll see you back here again with our next round of programming here on Coast to Coast. And again, we thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time. Again, a major thank you to Christy, Jason, and Tim for commenting and for joining us on the program. With that, folks, take care. We'll see you next time. This has been a presentation of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, folks. Until next time, good night and